Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you and the ranking member for holding this important hearing on the CDBG-DR program. And I thank our witnesses for joining us today. At the same time, when disasters seem more and more frequent, CDBG-R oversight is unfortunately an extremely important topic. The devastating events that have taken place in Puerto Rico in the last few years, from Hurricane Maria to the devastating earthquakes, have affected me personally, along with many of my constituents in Chicago. I traveled to the island to look at recovery efforts, and I don't have to tell you that it's been slow going. Challenges in the CDBG-DR allocation process are no small part of it. To Ms. Gentle, in your testimony, you highlighted some of the challenges that Puerto Ricans have faced with CDBG-DR funds after Hurricane Maria. It's serious stuff. One CDBG funded program only released housing resources in English, only translating them after protests. Many homeowners in floodplains have not been able to get help at all, leaving them vulnerable to displacement. And small local construction companies have been left out of contracts. And it feels like Puerto Rico has been left behind time and time again. Ms. Gentel, do you think that HUD is sensitive to the needs of Puerto Rico and its recovery? And do you think that the GAO's recommendations for the CDBG-DR program will meaningfully improve disaster relief efforts on the island?
I do think it will. It would make a significant difference for people who were harmed by Hurricane Maria and for people who may be harmed by future disasters. Puerto Rico is an especially egregious example of how disaster recovery and rebuilding don't work for the lowest income people when local communities especially are often shut out of the conversation about how these resources should be used. Those local communities and impacted people should be leading the conversations about how resources should be used, about how questions of relocation should be considered. And certainly, at the very least, materials about available resources should be made available in the relevant language to the communities. And none of that has been true in Puerto Rico. Advocates and impacted people have fought their way to the table and been able to make some improvements to programs, but it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't take that level of effort. It should be automatically built into the system that communities have a say in how these resources are used. And one of the improvements that this bill would do is require really robust community consultation and especially consultation with communities that are most impacted by the disaster.
So, to my first question, would that be a yes or a no on the sensitivity of HUD to their needs?
In terms of the sensitivity of HUD, yes, unfortunately, it's been a political question, right? The previous administration created many unnecessary obstacles and blocks to getting the money even to the island. This administration has a different approach and is prioritizing the needs of Puerto Ricans and being much more sensitive to their needs.
Thank you for that. To Mr. Begg, the GAO's report found that vulnerable people face obstacles to accessing relief through the CDBG-DR program. That's troubling for my community hit by a natural disaster, for any community. But it's especially troubling in Puerto Rico, where English is not the primary language and the average incomes are lower than they are in the continental US, and more people live in informal housing. Can you discuss what steps HUD can take to deliver relief to the people of Puerto Rico specifically?
Thank you for the question. The steps that HUD can take to assist Puerto Rico are similar to the steps that it can take to assist all grantees. Technical assistance and oversight and monitoring of progress in the grant is critical from the HUD perspective to ensure that when grantees are facing challenges, either in reaching their communities or in executing their programs or establishing them as a threshold matter, it's important that HUD step in and do what it can through technical assistance to make sure that the grantees have everything they need from HUD to be successful.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I yield back.